Hi, my name is Paula Hughes and welcome to Views on the News on Open Borders. We're putting questions on immigration to our own worldwrite volunteer coordinator, Saleha Ali.
Saleha, research has shown that over half the population wants significantly fewer immigrants to enter the country. Meanwhile, economists, policymakers and political elites tend to dismiss people who have anti-immigrant views by labelling them as xenophobic, uninformed and ignorant. There seems to be a subtle political consensus that the public don't know what's good for them. So, is it fair and right that experts and economists continue to shape immigration policies at the expense of real democratic choice and debate in the public sphere?
That's an excellent question, Mel. According to the most recent poll carried out by the Citizenship Survey, nearly 3/4 of Brits favour reducing immigration. It's also true that, unlike in the past, today the establishment has taken superficially a more pro-immigration stance, though interestingly not a pro-open borders stance, as a way of expressing its supposedly superior moral values of cosmopolitanism, liberalism, official tolerance, official anti-racism. This stance has become a way of disciplining and policing those who do not possess these supposedly sophisticated and right-on values. It's a form of elitism that can only increase community tensions, breed distrust, and turn people off politics. In fact, I don't accept that people's concerns about immigration are as bigoted and racist as they are made out to be. They reflect very real concerns over living standards, welfare, housing, and jobs. It's not a panic about an alien invasion. That these real concerns are viewed through the lens of migration is the result of an elite who view the mass of ordinary people as vile, who lock up migrants and refuse to engage in honest debate.
Hi Saleha. According to a study by the Migration Observatory and Ipsos Mori in 2011 on public perceptions of immigrants, 62% of those surveyed believed that most immigrants came to this country as asylum seekers, with 52% believing they came for work. In fact, data on long-term international migration in 2009 estimated that only 4% of immigrants came to the country as asylum seekers, with 37% coming for study and 34% coming for work. The Western media consistently portrays developing countries as disease and poverty-stricken, ruled by madcap despots and incapable of handling their own affairs without international support. Images of starving children, war and famine from one country are used to define a continent. Do you think this negative imagery has heightened people's opposition to immigration and increased their misunderstanding of why migrants come to the UK?
Hi Martha, you raised some very crucial fault lines in the immigration debate. The whole discourse of international aid views people in poorer countries as helpless victims of circumstance, not as agency-bearing individuals capable of handling their own affairs. So, we do have this picture of the helpless, pitiful victim coming to our country and being a burden. We do not see these migrants as creative beings who have chosen to take charge of their own destiny by emigrating. Pro-asylum campaigners have not helped either, as they have consistently made the plight of people the only case for supporting people's right to come here. Politicians too have used this idea that we should open our borders to pitiful asylum seekers to suggest that we are a morally superior country. It's hardly surprising that the public have been led to believe that the majority of people who come here are fleeing persecution. Interestingly, there is currently panic over an increase in asylum claims from Libya and Syria. There's no discussion about the fact that they are the product of a war resulting from our own intervention and interference in those countries. We can bomb, interfere and even invade a country, but their citizens cannot come over here.
Hi Saleha. Immigration controls do not entirely stop people entering the country. Rather, it reduces two categories of people: those who through the state are entitled to rights and those who are not, as they become illegal immigrants. I'd say that the consequences of a state of illegality for those individuals, such as exploitation, marginality and the lack of freedom, are well known. But I think we should start thinking about what it means for us as a society to have policies in place which just not only create different legal categories of humans, but legalize treating those categories differently. This has dangerous consequences for humanity and the belief in equality and freedom that our society and political institutions are based on.
Daniela, you're absolutely right. Distinguishing between legal and illegal immigrants is categorising people as human and subhuman. So-called illegal immigrants have no rights in this country. They cannot own or rent a house, they're not eligible to work or claim any social benefits, nor can they register with the GP. The only thing that they are entitled to is emergency health care. When illegal immigrants are caught, they are jailed in detention centres and prisons, some for very long stretches, and then deported. In 2011, nearly 53,000 migrants were deported from the UK. That's about 1,020 deportations a week. And you have to ask yourself, what crime is it that so many people are committing every week? The crime, we're told, is that they had the audacity to take control of their lives and move to another country to improve their prospects. I would ask, what's wrong or criminal about that? It is shocking that in the 21st century we imprison people for wanting a better life. You're right too, immigration laws make people second-class citizens, and historically this has justified all sorts of backward attitudes towards people, racist ideas and discrimination. Today we might have cleaned up our language, but criminalisation of people according to birthplace still legitimises scapegoating migrants for all sorts of problems. Freedom of movement is something that we should champion, and without it, equality is meaningless.
Enter the squalor below a motorway bridge in West London. The stench of 40 men living without sanitation is overpowering. The people here are called Fauji, illegal immigrants with no identification, no work, and very little hope.
I would refer to this problem as an epidemic in Southall. It's absolutely out of control. I don't even think an animal will be happy living the way some of these people are living. It's just diabolical, it's disgusting, it's disgraceful.
Having risked their lives and family finances to get to the UK, they're expected to send money back to India. Which is why some don't want their families seeing them living like this.
Hi Sal. Recent newspaper articles suggest that immigration puts a strain on the NHS and the schooling system in the UK, with longer waiting times and overcrowded classrooms. However, one report states that immigrants are making trips back to the dentist and doctors in their homeland because waiting times are shorter. If the backlash against immigration is due to the current financial climate, would forcing companies such as Amazon, Google, Starbucks and Vodafone to pay their taxes to improve the NHS and schools change people's perception of immigration?
Thanks, Paula. To blame the arrival of migrants for overcrowded trains, overstretched hospitals, the housing crisis or community tensions, as some commentators have done, is to project political failings onto families arriving from overseas. I would say if Britain's public services are in a mess, this is down to a lack of vision and investment here at home, not the desires of people from abroad for a better life. I'm not sure that anti-immigrant ideas are the direct result of the economic downturn though. However, I think improving public services through clamping down on tax fraud may miss the point. Forcing big multinationals to pay their corporation tax suggests the problem is simply the mismanagement of national accounts and doesn't deal with the underlying problem of an unproductive economy. There's no guarantee either that increased state revenue through taxation will be channeled into productive investment, improve our living standards or services. That requires a major economic rethink. Of course, this is not to say I have any sympathies for Amazon or Vodafone. I do think we need to spell out that how productive or unproductive an economy is has never been directly related to the numbers living there, and the state of public services has nothing to do with immigration.
Hello, Saleha. With the recent research on the economic value of international students to the UK by Migration Watch UK and NUS, and now Boris Johnson during his visit to India, countering the view of his Conservative Party by stating that the number of international students applying for study visas to the UK shouldn't be curbed. Isn't it about time that the government stopped looking at international students as a cash cow for the British economy?
I completely agree with you, Kaluba. International students are being used as cash cows and are often being conned into paying extortionate fees for a pretty substandard education. By comparison, British students are able to go to university in another European country and get a much better level of education for next to nothing. In fact, the points-based system doesn't only make it difficult for people to come into Britain, but it also enforces a heavy-handed level of surveillance and monitoring on those that make it to this side of the border. Universities have to act as police, monitoring the whereabouts of international students and to report on them to the UK Border Agency on a regular basis. If universities fail in their monitoring duties, their licence to admit foreign students is revoked, as happened to London Metropolitan University. The tragedy is, the government is more concerned about London Metropolitan University as a policeman than it is about its appalling education standards. These measures deny educational opportunities to people around the world on the one hand, and on the other empty the university of its meaning, as a place for the development of knowledge and exchange of ideas.
UK higher education contributes with more than $5 billion per year to the UK economy from overseas students.
This amounts to the instrumentalisation of immigration, treating people as just numbers which are either good or bad for the economy, not as human beings with needs, interests, ideas and aspirations wherever they're born. It also instrumentalises education, as the university is seen not as a place for the expansion of knowledge, but as an income generator and policeman.
Hi Saleha. Multiculturalism as government policy is constantly being reimagined to complement the political agenda of the time. We have seen it evolve from a line of defence against cultural conflict into a mode of control to dampen down dissent. However it is employed, multicultural policy tends to highlight our differences, offering no overarching thread to hold us together. Should we abandon the concept of multiculturalism altogether, or do you think we can reclaim it as a platform for constructive cultural dialogue, perhaps by drawing on elements of interculturalism philosophy and focusing on local level community cohesion?
Hi Jess, this is a very interesting question. I would say no, I don't think multiculturalism can be a force for good. Multiculturalism is a lived experience, living in a society transformed by mass migration that is less insular, more vibrant and more cosmopolitan, is a positive thing we all enjoy. However, multiculturalism as a policy, I think, is disastrous. It's a way of managing society by putting us in ethnic boxes and defining our needs and rights by virtue of these boxes in public policy. It's a case not for open borders and minds, but for the policing of borders, whether physical, cultural or imaginative. It has allowed many on the right to blame mass migration for the failures of social policy and to turn minorities into the problem, and it has forced many traditional liberals and radicals to abandon classical notions of liberty, such as free speech, in the name of defending diversity. At the heart of multiculturalism is a belief that an individual's cultural background frames his or her identity and defines who that person is. I think this denies our capacity for transformation and change. It fixes us. It suggests, for example, that the biological fact of my Indian ancestry somehow makes me incapable of living well except as a particular participant of, say, British Indian culture. That is complete nonsense that I know from personal experience to not be true. This idea of a fixed cultural identity is on a par with historical discussions about racial difference, and as a policy, I think it is racist and divisive. I also take issue, though, with your proposal for interculturalism as an alternative. Interculturalism sounds like a good idea because it suggests that different cultures can find common ground around a universal shared understanding. In practice, much like multiculturalism, interculturalism places unwarranted emphasis on culture as unchangeable, and it looks to the state to manage that.
When looking back at British immigration policy since the post-World War period, it is clear that the creation of borders has at times been a result of political party agendas and had no direct effect on the welfare of the British population. For example, many have claimed that David Cameron's recent immigration cuts have not necessarily been an advantage economically, but prevail, as it is a popular view among the British public that immigration is to blame for Britain's economic troubles. What is your response to this, Saleha?
Hi, Kaltrina. While it may be true that a high percentage of the British public view immigration as a problem, we know that this is not why immigration controls exist. As you say, immigrants are easy to blame by political parties when the economy is not doing so well. And the argument is easily shifted to blame the prejudiced oiks as the reason to maintain and tighten immigration legislation. It is worth asking what public attitudes in Britain would be if there were no immigration controls to start with, if newcomers to Britain were not already measured and demarcated at the border as numbers and greedy consumers of resources. I think in the absence of border controls, public opinion would be very different. I think that instead of pointing the finger of blame at supposedly nasty and prejudiced working class people for the existence of immigration controls, we need to start pointing the finger at the state authorities responsible for introducing and maintaining borders in the first place.
Hi Saleha. A survey which was undertaken by The Guardian regarding far-right ideas about immigration showed that anti-immigrant policies are much less likely to appeal to young people. Why do you think this is the case?
Hi Azim. This is a very good question. I think it's probably true that there is a generational divide in attitudes towards immigration. There are probably a number of reasons for this. When my father travelled to Saudi Arabia in the 70s for pilgrimage, he had to go on a ship and it took him days and it was very expensive. Today I can make the same trip at a fraction of the cost and in a matter of hours. So today more people can move around the world, giving the younger generation a more global experience. Secondly, a lot of people in the UK are second or third generation immigrants, so it no longer works to see the immigrant as the foreign outsider. Having said this, young people are not just a product of a different era, they also reflect establishment views. The report you mentioned, carried out by the think tank Extremis, is actually trying to find out what sort of people are prone to far-right ideas. The main target of the report is the older generation, who apparently harbour a more populist stance towards immigration and are thus more prone to far-right ideas. However, on the one hand, old-age pensioners who are uncomfortable with change are unlikely to be the harbingers of a renewed extremist ideology. Likewise, young people who are more attuned to self-censorship and what can be said to pollsters are more likely to express opinions that they think the interviewer wants to hear. In our times of political correctness, it may be the case that this is the official outlook of young people, a badge of respectable behaviour that the younger generation play up to. It's also useful to consider how uncertain the political elite is about what constitutes British culture and values. In the absence of these values, immigrants' arrival and presence provides a positive-sounding notion that ours is a nation of forever-changing values and outside influences in culture, food, language, moralities. Not believing in anything or standing for anything lets politicians off the hook, and young people have no doubt taken that on board. We should be clear though, support for open borders does mean standing for something. It requires seeing humanity as a creative force, not a burden, and I think young people and old are capable of getting that if the arguments are put to them.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to get involved in future views on the news, please email us at world.write@btconnect.com.